So the NKIs are really just a starting point. They're sort of the overall concept of that instrument. When you open them up, you have the sample material, the wave units, all the sound design that comes together to make a clear picture of that overall idea. So there really are NKIs within the NKI. So when you load an NKI here, you have several snapshots of different sound sources. And within those sound sources are variations where modulation, different settings, and other effects have been applied within the interface. The snapshots without the number at the end are the main sound source snapshots. And there's no modulation applied from the interface here or other different settings. These are sort of the default settings of the sound sources. The ones with the numbers next to them are variations. So let me load a main sound source snapshot and play. Now as you can hear and see, there's no modulation. All of these parameters are the default settings for this sound source. You can still morph to different settings with the ballerina, of course. And if I load a variation of that and play, you can see there's different settings and the automatic modulation is applied. And there's nothing stopping you from making your own presets. So you can quickly see how deep KINETIC Toys can get. The main sound source snapshots are a really good starting place to making your own variations. So to create your own presets, your own snapshots, I'll select the main sound source without any modulation applied and click this cogwheel here that will enter into edit mode. And you can click these letters here. Each letter will have different states of these origamis and glowing wisps. And so if I click B, I can move this around here. I can move the glowing orbs, and that will automatically store those positions in this variation here. So when I click out of edit mode, you can see that I can morph between that state that I just saved to. It's very easy to do that. As far as this part of the interface, the ballerina controls all the origamis and the glowing wisps, and the origamis represent the sample content. The wisps represent all of the synths, the wave unit content. So how this works, if I pull down the origami all the way to the bottom, you don't get any sound in this state. You'll start to hear the sound when you raise it up, and so you can hear that sound source. And the really great thing about the 2D pad here is when you pull it in this direction, you're morphing into sort of a two-dimensional sound source. So the origamis represent two sound sources that you can morph in between that are sort of tied together. And the same with the glowing wisps. If I raise the volume, you'll start to hear that synth, and then it will morph into another synth if I pull it in this direction here. You also have all of these motion parameters here. This is the step motion, this is the 2D motion, and this is the recording motion. You also see with the robot section, and by the way, if I click on the ballerina, you can see that it automatically changes to the wisps and the origamis, and if I click on the robot, it will change to the effects toys. The robot also, has the same motion controls as the ballerina, but there's one more on the robot. If you click on this ballerina icon, you'll see that the robot's movements will sync to the ballerina. That also includes the modulation. So if I give the ballerina some modulation, the robot will always sync to her movements. And you can see he's always staring at the ballerina as that happens. And as far as the effect toys, each toy represents a specific category of effect. So the UFO lo-fi character here always represents distortion. The metal planets represent modulation. The rocket represents spatial effects, and the star represents the spectrum, the spectral frequencies. And just like the origamis and the glowing wisps with the ballerina, the effects control two parameters. So if I raise the UFO lo-fi character this way, he's applying a bitrate reduction, and if I drag him this way, he's applying distortion. And all of the effects with their the spatial effects, the modulation, and the frequency are all applying two different parameters in the XY pad. And one thing that won't be mentioned probably in the manual is that for every instrument, every toy instrument I created, I felt it necessary to spend the time programming their own effects. So while these always represent a specific category, like this is always going to apply some kind of distortion, I felt that to sort of respect each individual toy, I found it necessary to give them their own individual effects that work with the sound of that toy. So this will always be distortion, but there might be a slightly different sounding distortion here, and there might be different spatial effects that you hear with the rocket. So yeah, I did that because I didn't want to wash out all of the NKIs by applying a generic sort of default template effect to all of the instruments. Okay, so the next thing I'll talk about is the tokens here on this little game board. You can really make the instruments in KINETIC Toys as simple or complex as you like, as you can already see. But really, to get a handle on that, these little tokens come in very handy. Just a little tweak of this parameter here, you can make a dramatic effect of your sound. You can, if you're being overwhelmed with the sample content, you can just pull this down. This control here, it controls all of the sample material. So all of the origami states. If you need to pull all of the volumes down at once, you can easily do that with this token. And the same thing with this token. This represents all of the synth, the wave unit content. So if you want to, bring out more tonalities, musical effects, you can raise this up and pull this back, or vice versa. You can, this setting here with the sample content up might give you more textural, soundscapes, and this setting will give you maybe more tonalities here. As far as this state of the tokens here, if I click on, when I click on this, as you can see, these are linked. These tokens are linked together, and the reason for that is the white origami and the white wisp here are really meant to be together. I really created the wave units, the synth, to really meld with the sample content. So when you link these together, they always move together, and that's kind of how they're meant to be. So if you want sort of a more predictable sound, you can just click on the linked tokens here, and you'll always be able to drag these together. Of course, there's nothing stopping you from sort of mixing and matching. I mean, this is a great way to experiment and get much different sounds by mixing and matching the various colors of the origamis and the glowing wisps. And then we have the robot token. And the great thing about this robot token, it's not just a wet-dry parameter for effects. This control takes the default state, whatever default state these toys are in on the XY pad, and you can sweep through them. So, I mean, it does turn them down. So there is some wet-dry going on, but it actually takes all of the parameters of these effects and sweeps through them. So you actually get sort of a quite musical effects when you sweep through this robot token here. Okay, the last thing I'll talk about is how to apply the modulation. First of all, we can turn up, so if you'd like an LFO, we can turn up the LFO by dragging horizontally on this UFO laser here, and that will bring up the amplitude of the LFO. And if I drag it vertically, that will change the frequency of the LFO. And to assign it, you just click on, so if I want to assign this specific LFO, I click on this sticker, LFO1 here. And when I click on it, you can see that all these arrows are pointing to where you can apply the modulation. So if I click on the arrow here, it will basically put a sticker or assign the LFO to this control. And you can easily delete it by clicking this X button here. And the same is true with the envelopes. And when you want to grab an envelope, you just click on the binder, and again, you just click on the the envelope sticker, envelope 1, and assign it wherever you'd like. Okay, so that's it for the interface. So thanks for watching.